Welcome to Dependable Flame, where we explore vintage petrol lighters, ashtrays, tobacconiana, and other useful mechanisms. Make yourself at home. Today we have a vintage ashtray from the 1933 Chicago World's Fair. It's relatively light. Looks like it has been pressed out of a single piece of, I'm not sure if it's brass or copper. It has a copperish look to it, but when it is photographed, it looks more like brass to me. You guys know, I've said it many times, I'm not a metals expert, but I'm sure that it is one or the other, or some alloy that includes both. I don't know. It's very intricate, 3-step on the sides, 4 rests, all facing different directions, and then this graphic in the middle which reads, "A Century of Progress, Chicago, 1933, Chrysler Motors, Plymouth, Dodge, DeSoto, Chrysler." Now, according to Wikipedia, this World's Fair was actually in 1933 and 1934 in Chicago. And also, according to Wikipedia, World's Fairs were basically held to showcase the achievements of nations. And by the time that this particular World's Fair took place, it was a world exposition which was largely focused on trade and displayed technological advances and inventions, which in 1933 automobiles would have still been a relatively new invention, since they'd begun to be mass produced, maybe 20-something years at that point at the most. But a very cool graphic, a very nice ashtray. Does show some corrosion. I wiped it down pretty good, haven't polished it or anything like that, and haven't made any decisions either whether or not I'm going to use it or possibly sell it. I like the fact that it's relatively small and yet still has 4 rests. The number of rests that an ashtray has, that's a big factor for me as to how much it appeals to me. If it's just 1 or 2, then it's okay, but the more rests it has, then the more people you could be enjoying a smoke with. So the more camaraderie, the more friendship that you could handle there in that one ashtray. But a very detailed, I don't know if you would call that embossing or just pressing. I don't know what the exact process is by which this would have been made. But you can also see it's relatively low profile. Sits very low. Doesn't take up a lot of space. And then it's also not going to be necessarily crowded with the 4 rests all facing in different directions. If you had it sitting in the middle of the table and 3 other friends at the table with you, you could each be reaching to grab your cigarette or joint or whatever type of cigarette that you were smoking without necessarily getting in the way of the others. does show plenty of patina besides the one obvious spot of corrosion there on the back, which I took a common household disinfectant wipe to and cleaned off as best I could with a toothpick. There was also a sticker on the back of it when I bought it, and I can't even tell now where the sticker was after cleaning it. But like I said, I didn't polish it or anything like that. Don't intend to. Really no need to. It's not that dirty. I'm not a huge fan of the green corrosion. That just seems like it belongs behind a toilet in an old bar or something. When you see that green, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of growing mold or something. It's just kind of nasty. But getting that particular spot cleaned up fairly well is good enough for me. And the rest of it, like I said, while it may show some patina, doesn't show that nasty kind of corrosion. It also doesn't show any really heavy wear on the embossed or pressed graphic that would lead me to believe that it had been heavily used by smokers. Because once that were to get caked in with ash, it would be a whole lot harder to clean out at that point. It'd be a lot more difficult to get it to where you could see all the detail like you can now. You can see all the way that the light reflects off of it. You can see some dents, dings. Not a perfect example. And I see a lot of ashtrays in the vintage markets, flea markets, antique shops, and places that I go to. And I even see, a good amount of them that are pressed out of aluminum and other metals. But I don't see that many that are brass or, like I said, this kind of looks more like copper to me. Looks closer to the appearance of a penny than it does brass, but what I know, as I've said before, I'm not a metals expert. Very cool find though, and if I could find this kind of ashtray, especially for the kind of money, I think I paid like $4.25 for this one. I bought this ashtray the day that I picked up the Park advertising lighter with the bubble graphic on the front, and also the Thorns table lighter that we haven't done anything with yet. But less than $5, it's hard not to pick up an attractive ashtray. And especially when I haven't seen one exactly like it before. But a cool remembrance of the Chicago World's Fair, which was apparently held in 1933 and 1934. And it still can be still useful to a smoker today. Until next time.